Positive Inc. We'll get into that, plus Luke Braun as well here on a Tuesday, Locked On Lions.
You are Locked On Lions, your daily Detroit Lions podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's happening, everybody? Matt Dery with you on a Tuesday. Locked On Lions, right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. It's Tuesday, June 13th and a Wednesday, June 14th. Thanks for making us your first listen, checking us out wherever you get your podcasts. Coming up on the show today, everybody's talked about Ben Johnson, Aaron Glenn. We've talked about Hank Fraley. There's some really good members of Dan Campbell's assistant coaching staff. But one guy is standing out in the offseason. We'll tell you about that coming up momentarily on the program. Plus, what's up in Minnesota? Are they rebuilding or not with the Vikings? What's Kevin O'Connell's ball club up to? Let me give you some stats. The Vikings won 13 games last year. Maybe rebuilding. Luke Braun, host of Locked On Vikings, coming up in a little bit right here on Locked On Lions. Plenty to discuss. Thanks for making us your first listen. Shout out to all of our everydayers out there who listen and watch the podcast each and every day. Thank you for doing that. Follow us on Twitter at Dery Speaks, Dery Speaks, at Locked On Lions on the Twitter machine. Also, the Matt Dery Facebook fan page. And you can watch us and subscribe for free on the Locked On Lions YouTube channel. OTAs continuing this week. A lot of the rookies and younger players working out in Allen Park. Other than that, a lot of the veterans are gone. But, you know, we know this. Ben Johnson this past offseason was a hot commodity, interviewed in places like Indianapolis and Carolina for those head coaching positions. And it turned out that the Lions OC ended up staying here to remain on Dan Campbell's staff, calling it unfinished business, which is kind of an old bit, but you know how it goes. Aaron Glenn, Lions defensive coordinator, future head coach, Aaron Glenn, as we like to call him, interviewed again in Arizona, Indy, and other places for head coaching jobs. If the Lions defense continues to get better, he will be somebody that will be interviewed again and eventually a head coach in this league. That means you're doing something right when you build a staff like this. But one guy that's been getting a lot of love lately is linebackers coach Kelvin Sheppard, Shep, as he's known down at 222 Rodwood Avenue down there. So, you know, what's cool is that the Lions have this up-and-coming young linebackers coach in Kelvin Sheppard, who, remember, just recently retired from the NFL, was an assistant coach down at LSU, plucked by Dan Campbell to be inside linebackers coach, and then became linebackers coach full-time last year. And now Dan Campbell has been saying, we want to give Shep, old Shep, not that Shep, but this Sheppard, Kelvin Sheppard, they want to give him more responsibility. They like what they see. The players rave about him. And now we're seeing that maybe, just maybe, the Lions linebacker room has the most depth it's had there in decades. I mean, a long time. I remember, when was the last time we were talking about backup linebackers that could legitimately start and play on this team? You know, you're talking about Jack Campbell, a first-round pick. Alex Anzalone, who really came on at the end of last year and got rewarded with a new 3-year free agent contract. Malcolm Rodriguez was the hero of training camp last year. Rodrigo can play. How good is he? I don't know, but they like him. And then you got Derek Barnes and Jalen Reeves-Maybin. But Derek Barnes is a guy that's been getting first-team reps. So the linebacker room is strong. Players are improving. And Kelvin Sheppard is a name to watch in coaching circles. And who knows, if Aaron Glenn departs after this year for a head coaching job, Kelvin Sheppard could be a candidate to move up and be a defensive coordinator. You have to have a good staff. You have to have good assistant coaches. All right. You don't want to have too much turnover. The Patriots for years had great staffs under Bill Belichick. What's happened the last few years? It was so bad last year that Matt Patricia no longer is even on that staff. He's out in Philly. He was the offensive coordinator a year ago in New England. Joe Judge had his issues. They've had retirements up in New England. And they can't keep assistant coaches like they used to. And they're not winning like they used to. Lions staff, for the most part, is back. Obviously, Todd Wash and Deuce Staley went down to the Carolina Lions, Panthers, and joined that outfit. But other than that, staff has remained intact. And Kelvin Sheppard is a guy to watch. He's done a really, really good job of the linebackers. And it's been nice to see him get some ink as a guy that is an up-and-coming young assistant coach that other teams might be pandering after in a few years, and that Dan Campbell wants to give more responsibility to. I love it. I absolutely love it. All right, coming up next, Luke Braun is going to join us from Locked On Vikings, the host of the Locked On Vikings podcast, our good buddy. What's going on in Minnesota? Dalvin Cook gone. Dalvin Tomlinson gone. Danielle Hunter might be traded. Thielen's gone. Kendricks is gone. It's cap hell up in Minnesota. Yet, are they rebuilding or not? We're going to ask Lucas Braun coming up next. But first, all right, NBA Finals are done. Now you want to bet on some hockey. The Stanley Cup Finals still going on with Las Vegas and Florida. There's no better place to get on the action than at FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. That's because right now FanDuel is giving new customers a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. It's up to $1,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. Sign up today to claim that no-sweat first bet. It's a great app. Everybody's using it. It's safe, secure, super easy. And you want to put money down on baseball? How about the Tigers last night? Woo! Big comeback over Lauren Jabbar's Braves. Want to put down some money? FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up. Make every moment more with our friends at FanDuel. Gentlemen, Luke Braun is with us from Locked On Vikings. A little June chat with Luke about what's going on in Minnesota with all the players they're just letting walk. Luke, good to see you.
Hey, Matt, how you doing, man?
Buddy, great to catch up. I hear you're getting married. I mean, this is a big summer for you.
Yeah, big year.
I love it. What's happening with the Vikings? Every day it's a new play. Danielle Hunter's going to be traded. Dalvin Cook is gone. Tomlinson's gone. This guy's gone. Thielen's gone. Like, is this a rebuild or not? What's going on?
They'll never admit to rebuilding. I don't think that they're truly rebuilding. I don't think that they're looking at this team and thinking, 2023 lost year. Like I think a lot of fans kind of always are. You get it. But I think the idea if you look at each of these individual contract situations, these are all contracts Kwesi inherited, right? They were all already under contract when he got here. And it was part of the draw of coming here was, they've got, Eric Kendricks and Danielle Hunter and Dalvin Cook and all these other guys. And I think he's now trying to find a way to get out from under these big, giant, top heavy contracts and finding a way to build a team of his own guys. And it's transitioning to that is the goal here, and trying to do so without doing what the Bears did last year, which is basically to just kind of like punt seasons with a QB on a rookie contract. They're punting seasons. You don't want to be there. So if you look at each individual situation, they played out the way they had to play out. With Dalvin Cook, he was never going to take a pay cut. He needed to take a pay. He was going to make $14 million. That's too much for a running back that's had injury issues. Excuse me. For a running back that's had injury issues. But if he wasn't going to take a pay cut and he wasn't going to renegotiate his contract to facilitate a trade, he wasn't going to take a pay cut to go play for Miami either. He thought, release me and I'm going to take my chances on the open market. I'm going to pit these teams against each other and they're going to pay me instead of having to pay draft capital and me, and I'm going to get more money that way. That's the way things happen with Dalvin Cook. With Danielle Hunter, it's, again, he's got a contract he's unhappy with. The Vikings have offered pay raises. It's just they haven't found the sweet spot where they both agree on it yet, and they're still actively working there. With Zadarius Smith, it was similar. He wasn't happy with his contract. The Vikings essentially were going to ask him to take a pay cut, and he said, no, I'm not doing that. I need more guaranteed money, and the Browns were willing to give more guaranteed money than the Vikings were. So each one of these individual situations tracks fully when you think of it as an individual situation. And then when you try to zoom out and put them all together, they're not going to really follow the same strategy because they're not the same situation. But the Vikings are trying to keep the team as good as possible, and they're just running into problems with guys either not wanting to take a pay cut or wanting more guarantees or something like that. And can we or can we not facilitate that? What are our solutions? But they're kind of taking each thing as it comes.
It's crazy. I don't think it's that nuts that Dalvin Cook is gone based on the contract, and they like Alexander Madison, and he's cheaper.
When he signed that, right, he signed that contract in 2020, and we were like, okay, he plays 3 years on this and gets cut. Like everybody knew.
Right. But the Alexander Madison's had actually big games against the Lions, but the Danielle Hunter situation, who's left on the D line if they make this deal, and what are they going to get back for him, do you think?
Oh, it's dreadful if they trade him away. And I think that's part of why it's going to be really hard for teams to come in and get him. You know, every team, I think like half of the Locked On podcasts have done a should our team trade for Danielle Hunter. And most of them are saying, yeah, I'd give up a fourth, a third. You're not getting him for that because it would be Marcus Davenport and like backups. Like it's horrifying edge room if Danielle Hunter is gone. It's already worse than it was last year, I would say. I think Marcus Davenport's a downgrade on Zadarius Smith, but it is dreadful if they trade him away, which, hey, everything has its price, right? If you give us enough draft capital where we now feel set up to get a quarterback in 2024, that might be worth having a bad edge room. But make no mistake, you trade away Danielle Hunter, you have a bad edge room. I don't care if you go out and get Frank Clark too, or whatever's left of Jadeveon Clowney. Like, I don't care if you go do any of that. You have a bad edge room. It's bleak. It's dark if you get rid of Danielle Hunter. So that has to be like worth our while. And I think the only real way to make that a profitable exchange for the Vikings is if it sets us up to get our QB of the future, which we do not have on the roster right now. No matter how you feel about Kirk Cousins, he's 35. He's not going to be around forever. So we need a succession plan.
Jaron Hall? Come on.
Jaron Hall, bridge QB. That's what I feel like he's the kind of guy that can bridge you through to a rookie, start the first 4 games before we all know the rookie's going to get his job, you know? And I think he's destined to be that guy. He's the next Josh McCown. That's the career path I foresee for him. The next guy he's going to get to collect 20 jerseys, be a backup on every single McVay roster, facilitate a bunch of rookies, go lose a bunch of camp battles. Love it for him.
Well, I happened to just scrolling through Twitter and I saw some of the stuff you wrote, and then I was looking at some other stuff, and they're like, Jaron Hall was great in minicamp, and I'm like, wait, who? Like, wait, what? It's crazy.
He's battling for QB2 right now. It's going
to be fun to cover this year.
Never a dull moment. There'll be good TV. Yeah. They'll lose every game. Every game's going to be 35-42. Their defense is going to be blitzing like crazy, and giving up long touchdowns if you can counter it. And their offense, I think, is going to, Justin Jefferson, Kirk Cousins, that's all still there. Jordan Addison, TJ Hawkinson. It's going to be a lot of fun stuff on offense, but it's going to be like the old Mike Tice, Dante Culpepper days where every game was, over-unders were at 65. Man.
Luke Braun with us, Locked On Vikings. What's the fan reaction? What are your listeners saying on the comments? This has got to be confusing because, like, on paper you go, well, they won 13 games last year. Now, again, you and I have had many discussions about all the close wins and everything else, but
yeah,
good young head coach. The GM did some nice things, like you said, Hawkinson there with the trade with the Lions. It's just sort of are the fans as confused as maybe you are?
I have. If you're an everydayer on the Locked On Vikings podcast, you will not be confused. I'm not confused. I think it all makes perfect sense. They're trying to figure out their situations as they come up, and ultimately they want this team to be as good as they can make it. They're up against some hurdles because of stuff like Danielle Hunter getting to a point in his contract that's untenable. Dalvin Cook got to a point in his contract that is untenable. So now they've got to figure it out. They've got lots of options. They could have figured out a deal with Dalvin Cook that extended him to get his cap hit down if they wanted to do that. They chose not to. They chose instead to go for the trade or cut route. They could have figured something out with Zadarius Smith. They chose not to. Those are decisions that they made that we can criticize or agree with or disagree with or whatever. But those options were available. They picked one. So that's where I'm at. It's not something that really leaves me bewildered unless you're only capable of viewing this kind of thing in a binary of like, well, are they tanking or are they going all in? And that's a great question to ask if you're a dynasty fantasy manager or if you're running a Madden franchise on your PlayStation. But in actual football, it's much more complicated than that, and they're in a gray area that exists. Most teams are in some kind of gray area where they want to make sure the future is set up. They want to make sure that they're set up now. Going all in on one side of that spectrum or the other is a fantasy land for video games.
If the Vikings don't win the division next year, Luke Braun's going to tell us who he thinks will. We'll do that coming up next. All right, Luke Braun, Locked On Vikings. We love this man. My NFC North brother here. We've done many shows over the years together. Mm-hmm. Talking a little bit about what's going on in Minnesota this offseason and all the defections. Before I ask about the division, who are you excited about that maybe fans in Detroit have no idea are on this Vikings team that you're going to go, this guy's going to be really, really good this year?
You know, the running backs behind Alexander Mattison all give me reasons to be really excited. And I don't know how much they're going to get in because Madison's the guy. But I love their seventh-round running back, the rookie they brought in, Dwayne McBride. Phenomenal in pass protection, very good at forcing missed tackles, really great spell guy. The team's really, really excited about Ty Chandler, and with good reason, too. The game has slowed down for him quite a bit since he first walked on the field last year as a sixth-round pick. Couple of guys that are really exciting. They also have Kene Nwangwu, the Iowa State guy. He's mostly a kick returner, and I think he'll probably stay there, but he's getting a chance to compete as well, so he could prove me wrong. So I love some of that. We'll see what they get out of guys like Jordan Addison and KJ Osborne, as hopefully as clutch as ever, and then they've even got some interesting names behind him, and somebody like Jalen Naylor, who is a second-year player who seems to be kind of taking a little bit more of a step forward as more of a like rotational player. But offensively, I mean, the Vikings offense, it's largely the same guys.
What about on defense?
Brian Asamoah would be the name I would give you. He was a rotational player. He kind of got in more and more and more as the season went on last year. I actually think he was a starter by the second time we played the Lions. He kind of replaced Jordan Hicks a little bit. So we all thought Jordan Hicks was going to get cut. They ended up going for the bigger money saving route with cutting Eric Kendricks. And now it's Brian Asamoah who's going to be a bona fide starter. And they're really, really excited about him. He's very rangy. He's a little bit of a smaller kind of speed linebacker, built in that same mold of a lot of the guys that have come out recently, these sort of finesse guys. Very good in coverage, but mostly it's, once he can see, like, he is so aggressive about how he shoots a gap. And as long as he can see the right gap, which is what the problem was, like
to repeat, I know it's June. We got a lot of time to go, but
we got a lot of time. If I can't pick the Vikings, which I would absolutely just do the blind homer thing and pick the Vikings, but if I can't do that, I mean, it'd be insane not to pick the Lions, right? I do not believe at all in Jordan Love, and the Bears aren't even asking their fans to take them seriously yet. They are. I mean, the offseason the Bears had, to me, really. It shows a little bit more of a patient approach, which I think is ultimately right for them. It's just a really weird timing for them to do it because they still have, they're going to have to make decisions on Justin Fields here without having a full team around him. They still don't have really much of a defense. They helped him on the offensive line. They got him, who's it, DJ Moore, but it's still like an incomplete thought. And the Packers feel like things that have to get worse there before they get better, unless Jordan Love is truly the second coming and it's their third straight quarterback because he's had 3 years to develop. But if Jordan Love isn't that guy, it's got to get worse in Green Bay before it gets better. So I think if the Vikings also fall apart, and there's plenty of reasons to believe that they could, then it's the Lions' division to lose, and we'll see if they can keep themselves from snatching defeat out of the jaws of victory.
What do you like most about Detroit?
I like that they're physical. I think that they're building something with a purpose. And for me, this is a very personal thing. I think a lot of people don't agree with me on this. I see that they take a running back, they have a big physical line. They are focusing on tacklers, kneecap biters, if you will. It's the kind of team that Dan Campbell wants to have. And we have all kinds of Brian Asamoahs all over the league, little speed-based defenses that are, built off of tweeners and guys that are small but fast and rangy and covering all these great, all this space on the field, because we've been looking at spread them out, McVay rollout offenses requiring people to get from numbers to numbers. We've been looking at that for a decade now, and everything is really small and fast and rangy. And so I have a great respect, whether it works or not. I have a great respect for, screw it. Let's just get the biggest dudes, line up, punch you in the mouth, and you're going to leave that game bruised, sore, and upset. And, even if we lose that game because we're running the ball too much or whatever, it's just going to be who we are. And I think that is... There's an art to that, and there's a way for that to really be you could be a nightmare for teams to play if you pull that off. And I think the Lions and the Falcons are the two teams that really feel like they're doing that they're trying to be the physical team, the big team, the punch you in the mouth, bumps and bruises team. And most defenses aren't set up to handle that. So I think there is a world where that becomes the thing. But I'm sorry, I just cannot believe in Jared Goff as a QB. I don't know how deep that goes, but it might only take 9 wins to win the NFC North, so you can have that.
Well, it's funny you mentioned quarterback because you said Cousins is 35 now. It's like, wow, that's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Crazy.
2012
saw him in
draft.
college. It seemed like 2 weeks ago he was at Michigan State.
Same draft as Andrew Luck and Russell Wilson and RG3 that year.
Yeah. Wild. Luke, great to see you, my friend. Thanks
year?
for doing this.
Who did the Lions take in 2012?
Who did we take? Oh, God.
Yeah.
2012? Was that Gostard Cherilus back then? You'd have to look that up for me. 2012.
I'm Googling it.
That's a long time ago.
It is a long time ago.
First round pick in 2012. That was...
Riley Reif.
Riley Reif. How ironic with you on the air here, former Lion.
Yeah, there it is.
I think he's made and Viking. I think he's made the rounds in the division.
Just about, yeah, because he's a Bear now.
Yeah, that's wild. All right, my man, great to see you.
Thanks so much, Matt.
There he is, Luke Braun with us, Locked on Vikings on a Tuesday edition of Locked on Lions.